if you look at my actual Instagram stories, there's not really much about wedding photography at all. Some people will say to me, like when they book, like, oh, we liked you and like we liked your personality and stuff, and we've never even chatted. And that's quite nice.
This is Danny. He's been running his very successful wedding photography business for nearly a decade, and today he's sharing all of his insight on how to get more bookings, the importance of marketing, his favorite bits of camera kit, and lots more. So let's jump right in. Just to clarify, we went to university together, and you kind of fell into photography, right? Because as far as I was aware, you got your hands on a Canon 600D, and then you were just uber talented at taking photos.
No, yes and no. Yeah, I mean, I got my hand on a camera. I think I was kind of rubbish when I first started, but I was eager, and I think that was the first step. Right, I just wanted to go take pictures all the time. So I definitely remember when I got my hands on it, like not putting it down for like a good 3 years. I remember that for sure.
What were you studying before?
What
were you studying at the time?
It was a course called Entertainment Technology, which now I look back at it, it's not very specific. It was like web design and a bit of photography, graphic design, anything basically in the media scene. So it was very like broad, but then that kind of led me to kind of find my footing with photography for sure.
And in terms of getting into wedding photography itself, was that the first kind of were you always drawn to it, or was there another side of photography that you wanted to get into? How did you kind of end up there?
I think I just kind of fell into it. I think like a lot of people who end up being wedding photographers, I don't think it ever starts off for many people as like their original passion. Like people aren't like, oh, I'm really passionate about wedding photography, and like, you know, they're putting like, there's no teenagers putting like wedding photography pictures up on their wall being like, oh yeah, one day I'll shoot for a wedding photography magazine or whatever. I don't think that happens. I think I kind of fell into it like most people. I think I was working for like a photography studio, just getting whatever work I could. That studio did weddings on the side, very budget, very basic. And I started from there really. It wasn't until I'd been shooting for about 6 months or so that I kind of found my footing and kind of found a love for it. But yeah, it was definitely not passion based at the start. I think, you know, I had these dreams like many people like of like shooting for like National Geographic and stuff like that. And then once I got into the wedding world, I realized how much I loved it. Like once I'd been doing it for a while, and once I kind of created my own business as well, that was when the love really started to like grow, I think, for sure.
How did you get your first client then?
My very first client. I can't remember how I got my very first one. There was a few things I did at the start. It was all very budget. I mean, it was not like not exactly the same kind of clients I have now. Still lovely people, but just, you know, a lower budget in wedding photography. So when I was first getting started, like the whole Groupon ads was definitely a thing. You could just like, yeah, I will shoot your wedding for like, you know, 250 quid, and like here's a voucher you can buy and whatever.
But it works.
It works, yeah, it got me bookings for sure. Facebook ads were kind of much better then. I mean, they're still good now, but they were way better then. So you could put up a Facebook ad for wedding photography, and pretty much every single engaged person in your area would see it, which was great. This is before Instagram was even a thing. So that was good. And then it was just a case of, yeah, just kind of swallowing your pride into shooting weddings for really cheap for a while, and then just slowly. I never leapt up the pricing ladder. I always creeped, you know. I always went bit by bit by bit. So it went from there really.
What were the kind of? I feel like, from my experience getting thrown in the deep end with kind of video production, I learned some hard lessons very quickly, and I'm glad I did, even though you could say it was a bit awkward at the time. What were some of those lessons that you learned? Like
early on, do you mean, or like just? I mean, like when I first started, I was very stressed. I was a very stressed wedding photographer. It was not a great fit for someone who still had some anxiety issues to deal with post university, you know, especially for like a young person who was kind of thrown into like quite a high, at least I perceived it as a high stress job at the time. So I learned early on that stress doesn't do you any good, and that you need to learn to let things go. And that a lot of the pressure applied in this kind of industry is, you know, self-inflicted. It's something you put on yourself. So now I'm a lot more chill. things are pretty easy now. And it just comes with experience of just doing it more and more and more. So I learned that lesson pretty early on. And it was also I learned a lot more about the business side of things. So I came in just thinking like, oh, if I'm a good photographer, then the business will take care of itself, right? I just have to take good pictures and then people will book me. And for better or for worse, that's not the truth with most of these kind of industries, especially when you're trying to attract just regular people. You need to know about marketing, you need to know about like customer care, you need to know about all these different hats that come into the world of photography or freelance photography or wedding photography or whatever, which I didn't know about at all. So I had to learn all these skills from scratch. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about, I knew a little bit about web design and stuff, which I think helped me out a bit. But yeah, all those other skills, really had to figure it out on the fly. I didn't have a budget to hire anyone to do any of this stuff. If I started again totally from scratch and I had like a 50 grand budget, I would just get everyone to do everything. I designed my first logo, which I still kind of use now, which I probably should change at some point, but like I don't mind it. It's fine.
I like it.
Yeah, it does a job. So you learn a lot of this stuff on the go, and I think that was one thing I didn't realize at the time going forward, which it's now all good.
Most of your work now is referral based though, right?
It's about 50-50. So
is it? Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So
Referral is still pretty big. It used to be when I first started out, referral was about 10% of my bookings, and it grows year on year. So it's about 50% now. It's probably a higher rate of actual bookings, but in terms of like the leads which come in, it's about 50%, which is it's good. Obviously, when you get a referral lead, so let's say it's a bridesmaid or just a friend at a wedding, they're pretty likely to book because they've seen you work and stuff. So there's not much convincing to do, which is why the actual booking amount is probably higher. But so 50% probably from referrals, and then there's quite a big chunk from Google. Quite a lot from like just people searching for me. Quite a lot from Instagram, which is. I don't really use Instagram that well, but people seem to still find it, which is okay.
Is this organic posts, or like do you run ads?
It's organic, I think. There are a couple of ads, but I think when they say Instagram, I think they mean organic posts and follow me and stuff like that. So that works pretty well. I am not super up to date with Instagram. I don't do reels, anything like that, which I should. I know I should, but I don't. So, and I'm not on TikTok, and I never will be.
You're always stacked with bookings. I don't think it matters too much for you.
I think when the fear kicks in, I'll start trying out some new stuff for sure. But yeah, for now it's all good. And like I say, there's always new marketing strategies in there. So with digital marketing, like I say, apparently TikTok is a thing now. But I don't want to do it, so I'm not gonna.
There's a lot of bells and whistles.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a lot about maybe being early adapters to the market, and if once you've kind of missed the boat, then maybe just stick with your guns. So that's what I'm doing. But yeah, lots of Google, and then there's like there's client referrals, there's venue referrals as well. So if you get tight with a venue, they'll recommend you. And then just random places people find you as well. This mate will mention someone at work, that kind of thing.
Is it kind of a case of in the early days, marketing is quite important into getting those first leads, but once you've got those bookings, because you've got more jobs, you start getting more referral leads?
Yeah, kind of. I think there's a lot of work to be done on the start of this business kind of thing, and like it's not one of those things where you suddenly start marketing and then the work just comes in straight away, and it's like a slow burn. I found in my case and many other people's cases, sometimes you get lucky. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done at the start in terms of time for marketing, in terms of like writing blog posts and making a brand and just getting people to know you. A lot of it now is kind of done for me, which is nice. I can kind of like sit back and let things do its thing, like Google, for example, that for the most part, just there's this thing, I just manage it. Instagram, I have a strategy which I just stick to. There's not much I'm not really like rethinking my Instagram day in, day out. I'm just doing the same thing all the time. And just I know when to post certain things. So there's not much thinking work. It's just doing it. Just carrying it on, I suppose.
How long did it take to work out that kind of routine with Instagram?
Well, man, I've been doing it now for 6 years, and I still feel like I haven't completely figured it out. So it takes a while. The problem is it's constantly changing and constantly growing. So you might have a strategy in place which works. But then, then they release stories, and then everyone expects you to do stories, and then there's a new strategy, and then everyone releases reels, and now there's a new strategy. I'm sure if we chat again in about a year's time, there'll be a new thing, and we'll be using that instead. So it's an ever-changing thing. I guess you can't get too complacent about it, but there are certain things. I think consistency probably trumps strategy. I found every time, just showing up on it. Also being personal, like you'll find if you look at my actual Instagram stories, there's not really much about wedding photography at all. It's just more like, I'm going climbing today and I'm having this for food and blah blah blah, and just whatever, just like my life, just to kind of, because I think with our industry there's definitely a personal connection which comes in the booking process, so people want to know who you are. So yeah, that's one reason I do that. I don't really post like marketing-y stuff on my stories. I just kind of leave it personal.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're building that relationship already before people have even met you.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think like before people even met, like some people will say to me, like when they book, like, oh, we felt like we liked you and like we liked your personality and stuff, and we've never even chatted. And that's quite nice. I think that does a lot of work for me. So yeah, it's amazing how, yeah, it's quite cool. I mean, I think it's interesting how many people would book me based on like so for example, like I was very lucky to get some tickets to Blink-182 yesterday. Oh. And yeah. And the amount of like couples who I didn't know who were messaging like, oh, I've been queuing for tickets and stuff. And like I can tell that these are people who are following me who, they might be getting in touch at some point, but they're like, oh, I like Blink-182 too, so let's get in touch with this guy. And which is nothing to do with wedding photography whatsoever, but I think it helps,
If I was a lead that came in and I was interested in using your services, what is your process to getting that lead to book with you?
Okay, yeah, cool. I found that like once people actually get in touch, they're quite likely to book, which is nice. The actual turnover rate. People have already seen my prices, which is that's a choice you have to make as a wedding photographer. If you show your prices or if you don't, I show them because it's how I would prefer to find someone. Like, so I just display my prices. So something hidden. So once they do get in touch, they're not going to be scared off. I know that they're already committed to that pricing, at least in their heads. So then it's for me, it's just a case of getting back to them pretty quickly. I don't make it too formal. Like I message them, I send like a video chat on WhatsApp. We can book in a Zoom or whatever, whatever works for them. We can literally just like FaceTime. Keep it really, really easy. Make it easy for them to book in. I do protect my time, so they can only really chat to me on like a Tuesday or Thursday. But that works for most people. And and then once you get to the chatting stage, it's kind of a done deal, really. They just need to make sure you're not like a weirdo, because they already know your prices. They already know like how you work, for the most part. And the chat is not really like a sales call for me. It's just a chat. It's just just finding out about their day, and and just letting them know how it kind of works. But it's pretty self-explanatory. There's not much I have to tell them. I just say I'm going to be at your wedding and take pictures, and like you'll have a nice time, and that's kind of it. So yeah, it's all pretty simple. But I just try and make sure that there's no speed bumps. There used to be a lot of speed bumps. People, for example, like I remember when I first started, people used to like send contracts in the post and stuff like that, which is just like it's a faff. Anything which is faffy in the wedding planning process, they might not do. So now everything's electronic and really easy, and paying booking fees is really easy. Just to kind of remove any of those kind of like points of resistance, I suppose. Yeah.
What do you get? Do you ever get any objections or like weird questions?
So sometimes, and it's not really the couple's fault. It's normally because they've like found like a blog post or something of like top 10 questions to ask your wedding photographer, and like they're always stupid questions, if I may say so. It's things like, oh, are you insured? It's like, well, I've been doing this for 7 years, of course I'm insured. Like, yeah, I know to insure myself. It's silly things like that. So you'll get like weird random questions like that sometimes. There are like a few red flags I've come across before. So just for background for people who may not have seen my work is mostly documentary and mostly kind of like fun and pretty chill, I think. So if you were looking for maybe like a very like a photographer whose their main goal is just to make you look good, I'm not that person necessarily. So if I get that kind of vibe from a couple, then that's probably the only thing I'm ever kind of looking out for. If their main priority is like portraits and just looking good in their pictures, and they don't really care about, you know, the moment shots, that kind of thing. That's all good. That's fine. There's a photographer for everyone, but I know that they're maybe not the right client for me, so I keep an eye out for that. But if they've got in touch and have seen my work and they've put in some kind of research, it would be weird if they were like that, because it means they've completely missed the point. I structure my website and everything with that in mind, and the pictures I post, I try to keep it not particularly portrait heavy to kind of make sure I don't attract too many of those clients, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever turned anyone down?
Yeah, a few times. Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
I do
Because they weren't a good fit, or?
a little bit of that. Sometimes you just don't get a great vibe. Again, that sounds a bit picky. I shouldn't maybe be turning away work, but yeah, sometimes you just don't get a good vibe. I've had a couple of times where they've kind of flat out told me, they said, oh, we're really hard to please, by the way, and we're really picky, and this and this has to be right, and like I'll probably be really stressed in a day, and I'm like, that I don't really want that. I kind of just like, I wanted to be chill. I don't need that extra added pressure, So I think turning it down for me is just, for me it's a better thing than the worry of them not being happy, because I can work as hard as I can, but I can't control. I know that I can't control how people feel about their pictures. So sometimes no matter what you're going to do, someone, they might not be happy with their photos. I just protect myself from that. For my own mental health, I'd rather not take the money and save it for someone who I know for sure is a good fit. Again, nothing against those people. I'm sure they had a great wedding and great photographer, but yeah, I think it's just as much for me to find the right person as it is for them to find the right photographer, I think.
I completely agree with that.
Mhm.
Even before meeting people in emails, you can just spot like red flags for certain things, and I'm just like,
Yeah. Well, I bet
nah.
you get it even more often with like commercial stuff, because I bet you'll get people who, maybe like a PA or someone who's given a budget and it's like, just hire a commercial videographer, and they'll Google you and they'll just be like, you do this, and even though like the way you work is nothing like what they want,
Yeah,
I bet you have to kind of like figure that out.
I think you have to make sure that the respect goes both ways.
We all grow up with different experiences, right? So, especially certain couples might grow up with like perspective of what good wedding photography is, because maybe they have spent more time on like, Pinterest and stuff like that than I have, and they see very pretty pictures. Like I say, I don't know anything about like TikTok trends and stuff like that, but like I know you see lots of wedding stuff on there. So I think it's just more a case of perspective, and there is nothing wrong with that at all. It's just a case of if you take the old restaurant analogy, if someone's looking for a restaurant and like they've never eaten like Chinese food before, maybe I wouldn't recommend like they go to Chinese food, because you don't know if they're going to like it or not. And it's the same for like photography. I want them to kind of have the right expectations going in. I don't want any surprises. I'd like to say my work is pretty consistent. Obviously every wedding is different, but I come home and when I deliver the gallery, it is of the same standard and it looks the same in terms of the way I work. I don't change the way I work per wedding. Obviously I'm empathetic and I listen and I look at different things, but I don't like, it's not like one wedding is superposed and one wedding's not. I just go in and do my thing. And I think that's the easiest way to be a creative. It's the same as like you wouldn't expect like a musician to come in and play different music every night just to suit different people. You pick the right musician for like what you want to listen to, right? And I think it's the same thing with wedding photography.
For sure. How do you I know you kind of take time off through winter.
I try to, yeah.
Are you kind of like planning on growing the business anymore? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's always in the back of my mind. I'm a constant battle with this. One side of me says, oh, I should be doing some stuff in winter and maybe like going away a little bit, but also trying stuff out, stretching my creative muscle, just trying things out a little bit different, a bit for fun. Not so much for a financial sense, but just for like to fill the days. Just so I'm not playing too many video games over winter. So it's a bit of that, but then also I remember there's a quote from Parks and Recreation, the TV show, where very specific quote
Yeah.
where I can't remember the name of the guy, but a guy with a mustache. He says, "Don't half-ass two things, like whole-ass one thing." And I always try and remember that, like as in like spreading myself a bit too thin and trying to do two different things at once. I'd much rather try and maybe be the best wedding photographer I possibly could be than being like an okay wedding photographer and an okay, headshot photographer. There might be room for both, but I'm just wary of that, of spreading myself a bit thin. But yeah, for sure, I'm always thinking about something else.
Would you ever dip in videography?
Nah. I love videography. I hate editing, so I'd have to have an editor for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't like. I'm just not one of those people who likes sitting in front of a computer for too long. I go a bit insane. Like, I think I'm pretty techy, but I just don't like being on a computer, man. I want to be outside and enjoying nature, and like not editing in a dark room for hours and hours and hours, which some people love. I'd rather not. So yeah, editing is not for me.
No, I get that. It's way more
Yeah.
fun to shoot than to edit, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, same. Like I mean, like editing is definitely part of the job for photos as well. But like in my head, once I've shot the wedding, I'm kind of done creatively, and then the editing is kind of like it's just a polishing and just preparing it and just making sure it looks nice. But I don't get much enjoyment from it. Whereas I love shooting the wedding.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Whilst we start to wrap up, what are your top 3 tips for upcoming wedding photographers and videographers? Maybe more so photographers, because that's your field.
Yeah. So I think it depends on where you're coming from, right? So there's different bits of advice you could give to people depending on like their life situation, especially in terms of business. I get a few messages on Instagram and stuff, people asking me, and I'm never quite sure what to say because I don't know where they're at. But it's one of those things where wedding photography is a very slow burn, and it does take time, it does take patience. It's also something you need to think about in terms of like the sacrifices involved if it's right for you. Like, as a wedding photographer, you kind of give up your summer Saturdays completely. That's kind of a given for most of us. So you need to think like, is that part of my life? And is that something I want to do? Am I okay giving up Saturdays? Or do I live for the weekend and maybe wedding photography isn't right for me? So you definitely got to do some soul searching. And then in terms of like,
you
yeah.
work a lot of 3-day weekends. You work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
I did during COVID catch up. Yeah, not so much anymore. Like I've capped next year to pretty much one wedding a weekend. But yeah, during COVID times, I was flat out for sure. Yeah, because all the postponements and stuff. So I was just taking everything. And then yeah, and I think in terms of like business growth and stuff, I think if you're in a position where maybe you're working a full-time job and you can do weddings on the side, that's not a bad thing at all to start with. So you don't get that financial fear. Don't feel like you have to quit everything to become a wedding photographer, because it is on the weekends. So you can have a side income if you need to keep an income coming in. If you're of a luxury where you can quit your full-time job, great, but don't feel like you have to. Like to start with, let it get to the point where you're too busy and then quit your full-time job. Because I think a lot of people end up going all in and then they get the fear and then suddenly the money's not coming in straight away. And then they kind of panic and then they end up doing nightclub photography or something like that to pay the bills, which is no fun for anyone. So yeah, just kind of bear that in mind. And then it's just a case of just educating yourself, I think. Learning about marketing, learning about branding strategy and just running a business and all that kind of stuff is really, really important. Finances, stuff like that, just boring stuff.
Learn all about that at uni.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, learn all about stuff. Learn about like managing your taxes, because otherwise, like you're going to pay your taxes and then you'll be like, oh, where's all my money gone? So yeah, learning all about that stuff is really, really important as well, I think. But yeah, constantly educating yourself. I think even now, I'm always finding ways to be trained and mentored and getting feedback, that kind of thing. Having that kind of like feedback loop is a really, really, really important way to kind of like get better. Constantly having a mentor and then getting immediate feedback, showing your work to the world, kind of putting your ego to one side, and just building up that way. And and then practicing intentionally. That's also really important. I could go on and on about like advice, sorry, but like those are some things, all of those things.
I think it's true about showing your work to the world as well, because a lot of people get scared of showing their work to the world
Yeah,
because
for sure.
they're worried about a negative reaction. But actually, that negative reaction, if you did get one, is actually going to teach you a hell of a lot
Yeah,
and actually get you better for the future.
100%. Yeah, I think so. Like, I think without getting like that kind of feedback in your work, if you look back to the work we were doing at university with like our absolutely terrible editing styles and just all this stuff, and like we thought it was great because we had nothing to compare it to, but really someone should have been like sat us down and be like this is rubbish. Like you need to change it. Yeah, having feedback is super important. Like getting yourself in like the right communities, so you can learn from like the mistakes of others, I think is key. Like going in and out on your own, I would imagine is a much slower rate of growth. So I think, yeah, kind of connect with other photographers, I think is a good, and just other business people, is a good way to go for sure.
And very quickly, you're very minimal with your kit that you take to shoots.
Yeah, I think so.
What are your 3 kind of favorite bits of kit? And what did you learn that you didn't need to bring on a shoot?
3 favorite bits of kit. Okay, well, I suppose I should say my camera, right? Like that's kind of something I use quite a lot. So can I say the brand of a camera? Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I use a Sony A7 III, which is great. I love that camera. It's not the most exciting, fun camera in the world, but it's definitely like one of the safest cameras for wedding photography in terms of nailing focus and speed and just dealing with low light. It's just a very, very nice camera. I like to not have to think about my camera's limitations, and I've never really hit much of a limitation with that camera. I never like, oh, I wish it was better at low light or whatever. It's always fine for me. So yeah, that's one for sure. I love my camera backpack. I'm a big fan of my backpack, which is a Peak Design backpack. So I love that. I use that all the time. Yeah, so that's something I think definitely invest in a good bag. Is nice to have. And I suppose my laptop as well. Like I think that's something never to be kind of understated, is how important your actual computer is, because that's probably your most important kit. So I've got a MacBook, and yeah, it's fine. Like it's not the fastest MacBook in the world, but like it's totally fine. So yeah, I guess those 3 pieces of kit are your most crucial, I suppose.
You don't take a lot of lights, do you?
No, not anymore. No, I just take 2 speed lights. I used to have like off-camera flash and stuff like that, and I do have like stands and grips and stuff in the back of a car, but they would very rarely come out. Most of the time, I'm just using what's called bounce flash, which is this flash on top of the camera, and then you point it at a wall or whatever to bounce back onto the subject. So, and those are like little flashes. So yeah, I mean, I can fit everything I need for a wedding into a very small bag. I like to pack light. I like to not have to think about what I'm using. I'll use 2 lenses during the day, and I will change one of them. I change one for group pictures. I have a group picture lens, and then I change one for dance floor, and those are the only 2 times I'll change lenses. And then the rest of the time it's just those 2. So yeah, I like to keep it simple. I think it makes it easier for me to think. I think some people deal better the other way, but like I just like to like this camera can do this and this camera can do this, and those are my limitations. Like set those boundaries, as opposed to having like a million options of lighting. I'm like, well, do I turn the flash on or off? And that's kind of it. Those are my 2 decisions really.
Well, you've nailed it because you're doing very well. So
I mean, it's ever changing. Ask me again in a year, man, and I will probably be off camera flash.
But that's the fun of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too.
So wrapping up, where can the lovely listeners find you? If you want to be found.
Yeah, you'll find me at my flat. Yeah, so Instagram is the best place to find me. That's where I chat with other photographers for sure. I've been looking at this new. Have you been looking at like? Is it called Vero or Vimeo?
Yeah, Vero's been around a few years, but because Instagram keeps messing about with what they are, I think people are kind of moving over.
Okay, cool. Well, for now I'm on Instagram. So just search down Jack Photography. You'll see my face. Yeah, that's the best place for sure. I mean, I've got a website and all that jazz, but like, yeah, if you want to chat, Instagram for sure.
Thank you very much to Mr. Danny Jack. If you want to find him on Instagram, you can find his Instagram link below this video. And if you're in need of more bookings for your own wedding photography or videography business, hit the link below to schedule a free call with us, and we'll run you through the best way to get more bookings.